Okay, today we're going to cover multinational financial management. That's the topic of the last chapter in your textbook. And well, one thing I want you to pay attention to is that we are talking about multinationals and not internationals. Global or multinational; those are terms that are used for companies that operate throughout the world. Um, And whereas an international company may be a company that's in a different country. Um, so we are talking, of course, about multinationals here, right? So here's this company, Skipping Stones Incorporated, has become very successful in the U.S. markets with its patented skipping stones designed for arthritic hands. Scooter, the VP of marketing, has discovered that people all over the world enjoy skipping stones. Booker, the company's COO, that would be Chief Operations Officer, has determined that by moving the manufacturing operations to Taiwan, the company can lower its manufacturing costs by half. Doogie, the company's CEO, wonders about the implications of going global and becoming a multinational corporation. He wonders why companies in general go global. Further, he asked the company's CFO, Mr. Mullah, to explore the extra complications going global might bring to the firm's financial management. Can you help them out? So, a global firm or a multinational firm is a firm that operates in a number of different countries in an integrated fashion. There are several reasons that might prompt a company to go global. And some of those reasons are, well, they want to grow by broadening their market base, right? So going to different countries means that you can get more customers. Or to diversify operations, right? By limiting your operations to one country, you're actually exposed to the economic trials of that particular country only. And if the economy turns sour in that country, it'll take you down with it. But if your operations are spread across the globe, then you could do well somewhere else to offset the losses um, from a market where you have a weak economy. So it's economic diversification. Or then to seek raw materials. Sometimes you have to expand or go set up operations in a different country because it's got the supply of raw materials like the rare earth minerals and that we get from Australia and China, but a lot of um, the rare earth minerals that are used in electronics are mined from China. So we have Chinese operations for companies that may be um, of different origins. So, for instance, Apple, right, goes to China not just to seek raw materials, but also for production efficiencies, right? To seek newer technologies, and sometimes a company from a less advanced economy may actually uh, try to buy another company or merge with another company from an advanced economy because it can get access to better technology. To seek production efficiencies, of course, the biggest example of this is when we see companies go to a different country because the cost of labor is less and in that other country, and so production becomes more efficient um, in an economic sense. To avoid political and regulatory hurdles, sometimes companies will just establish operations in a foreign country because they get better treatment from regulators than just being a foreign company who sells to the domestic market. Um, all right, going global, of course, presents some challenges and which, every challenge can be an opportunity. But we can categorize these challenges or opportunities into six major factors or six major categories. Different currency denominations and regimes, right? So there's a currency regime is how the currency is managed, how much the government intervenes in managing the value of a currency. So that's as the currency regime. Of course, denominations are the numbers. Differing economic and legal environments, because we have different laws, different economic environments, and the company establishes operations in another country, they have to cope with all of those, right? Varying role of governments. In some cases, government is heavily involved in an industry and its operations, and in other cases, they are less so. So you have to cope with that. You have to cope with differences in culture when you're dealing with people from other countries. Obviously, languages, right? The political risk. You may have a business-friendly government right now, but the next election cycle may bring another government, a different government that could be more unfriendly to businesses. All right, well, when we go do business in other countries or when we travel, we have to deal with exchange rates and currency conversions, right? So let's look at some issues related to currency conversions. Brittany plans to go to Great Britain for vacation. She needs to convert US dollars into British pounds. Her bank gives her a code of 1.5025. How many US dollars does she need in order to exchange it for 500 pounds? Did her bank give her a direct code or an indirect code? How are exchange rates conventionally coded in the foreign exchange markets, right? So the code that Brittany received is a direct code, where 1 unit of foreign currency is expressed in terms of units of home currency. Right? So each British pound can be purchased for $1.5025. That's the code. It's called a direct code because we say that for 1 British pound, we'll need to spend $1.5025. So 500 British pounds can be purchased for 500 times that 1.5025, or $751.25. Conventionally, in the foreign exchange markets, we code all currencies in indirect codes except for this one, British pound, and the euro, right? So most of the time we'll say, when we're looking at other currencies, like the Japanese yen, we would be talking about how many yen can you buy with $1, right? But with the British pound, and the euro, we're talking about how many dollars does it take to buy 1 British pound, which is a direct code. But except for British pound and British pound and the euro, we talk about currencies with in indirect terms. The codes are indirect, and that's in the U.S. foreign exchange markets. Okay, Mr. Coolhead observes the following ask codes at the FX traders booth, right? It says, and this is an ask code as opposed to a bid code, but this is what you can get these. You can get 98.86 yen for $1. Right? You're buying yen. You can get 1.146 Swiss francs for $1. Or you can buy 0.0115 Swiss francs per yen, right? So Mr. Coolhead smells a profit opportunity here. How can he arbitrage the above codes, right? So basically, if we use a cross rate, Right? Given the indirect codes for Japanese yen and Swiss franc, we can calculate a cross rate for Swiss franc per yen, right? So Swiss franc per Japanese yen, we can get that by looking at Swiss franc per dollar quote and then Japanese yen per US dollar quote. Of course, we'll have to get the inverse of that code because we need US dollars per Japanese yen. So it's the 1.146, which is the franc per dollar code, multiplied with 1 divided by 98.86, which is the yen per dollar code. And what we get is 0.1159, right? I'm sorry, 0.01159. And this is 0.01159 Swiss francs per US dollars, which you can see is different from the quote, which was 0.0115. And so there is a profit opportunity here. Right? The calculated cross rate shows that foreign exchange markets are not in equilibrium. Exchanging Swiss francs to US dollars and then changing US dollars into Japanese yen will yield more yen than directly exchanging Swiss francs into Japanese yen. And Mr. Goulet can arbitrage this opportunity by exchanging Swiss francs into Japanese yen, then Japanese yen into US dollars. And finally, US dollars back into Swiss francs. Right, so how we can do it? Well, let's start with the 1,000 Swiss francs. Right, given the Swiss franc Japanese yen exchange rate quoted to us, we can get 1,000 divided by 0.0115 or 86,956.52 yen. Right. Given 86,956.52 yen and our yen dollar exchange rate, we can convert it into dollars by dividing it by 98.86, and we get $879.59. And then we'll take the dollar and Swiss franc exchange rate and use that to convert our $879.59 into 1,008.01 Swiss franc. Right? And of course, we started with 1,000, now we have 1,008, right? So those were the arbitrage profits. Okay, let's look at this notion of purchasing power parity. One McBurger costs $3 in the United States. In Farfik land, one McBurger costs 5 farks. The United States and Farfik land have a free trade agreement and do not impose any restrictions on the movement of goods and resources, including capital, between each other. What should be the spot exchange rate for farks? Okay, so under the conditions described above, whereas there's free movement of goods and resources, which includes capital, right, and labor, etc. When there's no restrictions, then the purchasing power parity should exist. Hence, the spot exchange rate can be determined by the ratio of prevailing prices in the two countries. So following convention, we'll calculate the indirect code for farks. And S here is the spot exchange rate. Spot exchange rate. P of F is the price of a McBurger in the foreign country divided by PH, price in domestic country, because we are calculating an indirect code. And that's 5 farks over $3, or 1.67 farks per dollar. Right, so that should be the exchange rate when purchasing power parity holds. Of course, we don't quite have that. We don't have completely free movement of goods and resources between countries. So, but in the capitalist environment that we have, at least where capital flows are unrestricted, then we will have this interest rate parity, right? And let's look at interest rate parity with an example. So today the spot rate of euros is 1.4205. The risk-free rate of interest in the Eurozone is 4%, while the risk-free rate in the US is 2%. What should be the 6-month forward rate for Euro? So arbitrage enforces interest rate parity amongst heavily traded currencies. Interest rate parity implies that using the forward currency market to structure a risk-free round-trip transaction will ensure that the return generated from foreign risk-free investment is the same as from the domestic risk-free investment, right? So remembering the convention in FX markets, we realize that the spot quote of 1.4205 is a direct quote. It's for euros, right? Meaning that we'll have to spend $1.4205 to get 1 euro. All right, expressing the interest rate parity condition in terms of direct quotes, we have the forward rate of home currency per unit of foreign currency, right? That's the direct quote, equals the spot rate of home currency per unit of foreign currency times 1 plus the interest rate in home country divided by 1 plus the interest rate in foreign, and by interest rate we're only talking about the risk-free rates here, right? And this is easy to keep straight because if we're talking about quotes in H over F, home currency over per unit of foreign currency, then the spot rate should be in the same units, and of course we're talking about 1 plus interest rate of home currency in the numerator and 1 plus interest rate of foreign currency in the denominator, right? And this is the interest rate parity condition. Also, in our problem, we're just given nominal rates, and we have to know that those are annual rates, right? We're not told that they're anything other than annual rates, and we must assume they're annual rates. So over a 6-month period, the Eurozone risk-free rate is actually 2%. It's half of the 4%. Likewise, the 6-month risk-free return in the US is 1%, which is half of the 2% annual. So the forward rate should be, using the interest rate parity condition, we were given the spot rate of 1.4205 divided by 1 plus the 6-month interest rate in the US, which is 1%, divided by 1 plus 6-month interest rate in the Eurozone, which is 2%, right? So we're talking about 1.01 divided by 1.02 equals times 1.4205. And we get 1.40657 or 1.4066. Right? So that's the forward rate. It should exist in forward markets, right? But Big Bang quotes 1.4077 on 1 euro for a 6-month forward contract. Given that in the previous calculation we discovered that the forward price implied by interest rate parity is 1.4066, how can you arbitrage this? How can you structure an arbitrage to profit from this miscode? Well, the forward quote from Big Bang actually is favorable in the sense that it prices the euro too high. It's 1.4077 rather than what it should be, 1.4066. So the euro is too pricey, so whatever is too pricey, we should sell, right? This disparity actually allows us to formulate a riskless arbitrage strategy to earn profits. Since the forward quote overvalues the euro, we will benefit if we structure a transaction where we can sell euros. And so here's the steps for an arbitrage, right? And a kind of true risk-free arbitrage doesn't risk any of your own money. So you borrow 100,000 in the U.S. at the U.S. risk-free rate of 2% for 6 months, right? And large financial institutions are able to borrow money at nearly the risk-free rate. Then invest it in euros. So first you have to exchange it to euros, the 100,000. Given the current spot rate of 1.405, $100,000 will be exchanged to 70,397.75, right? So that's how many euros we can have with the 100,000. Now we're going to take that and invest it in the Eurozone risk-free asset, which yields 4% or 2% over 6 months, and that's a sure return. It's a risk-free asset. So we know that in 6 months we will have that 70,397.75 plus the 2% interest rate to give us a total of 71,805.70. Right? So we know this now, and well, that's how many euros we're going to have in 6 months later. So what we'll do is we'll use the big bank's code of $1.4077 per euro, and we will sell euros to big bank and using the forward market. So of course this exchange will happen 6 months later, but we are able to lock in this rate using the forward code by big bank. So this ensures that you can convert your euros into dollars at the quoted rate 6 months later, right? So now 6 months have passed by. We got the investment plus the interest from our Eurozone investment, right? So we have the principal and the interest, which is 71,805.70. We'll sell those euros to big bank using their code, and we end up with $101,080.88, right? Well, we had borrowed 100,000 with that 2% rate, but over 6 months it's 1%. So you'll repay your U.S. loan 100,000 with the interest, the 1% interest. 100,000 times 1.01 gives us $101,000. We got to pay this batch back, but we get to keep the difference. And that difference is $80.88, and that's the arbitrage profit. So if enough arbitrage exists, more euros will be sold in forward markets, bringing the price of forward contract down until that equality of interest rate parity is established. Well, there's a multi-year version of forward of the interest rate parity condition as well. A 5-year U.S. Treasury note yields 5%, while a 5-year risk-free asset in Japan yields 4%. If the spot exchange rate for Japanese yen right now is 99, which means you need 99 yen per dollar, what is the expected 5-year forward rate exchange rate? Right? And the bond, remember that bond yields are quoted on nominal annual terms, so these are annual, 5% in the US and 4% in Japan. Also, remember in convention, we can determine that the spot rate quoted above is in indirect terms, 99 yen per dollar, and we can use a multi-year version of interest rate parity, which looks very much like the interest rate parity condition that we had seen before, except this is compounded over 5 years, so we have the rates raised to the power of 5. And in this case, our 4% was the interest rate in Japan, right? So here we have the foreign country over home country scenario, because we have an indirect quote, foreign currency over US currency, 99 Japanese yen per dollar, right? So we'll take 1 plus the interest rate in Japan, which was 4%, 1.04, divided by 1 plus the interest rate in US, 1.05, equals and this is gonna this will go on for 5 years. So we compound it over for 5 years. Y to the power x, 5 equals, and now we multiply it with the spot rate, which is 99. Now we get $94.37, right? So basically, we see that we'll get less Japanese yen for a dollar 5 years from now, because we basically making Japanese yen more valuable, right? We're going to spend a dollar and we'll get less of it. And why is that? Because the interest rate in the US are expected to be higher by 1% for the 5-year period. So as we've seen in the previous few examples, forward rates in foreign exchange markets are based on differences in nominal risk-free rates between the two countries. An important determinant of risk-free rate is expected inflation, right? If a country experiences higher inflation than other countries, its currency will depreciate in value over time. And the reverse will be true for countries experiencing lower rates of inflation. Generally, over time, relative currency depreciation is observed to be approximately the same as a difference in relatively higher rates of inflation observed in our home country. So if a country has higher rates of inflation, then its currency will depreciate over time. On the other hand, if it has relatively lower rates of inflation, then its currency would appreciate over time, right? Okay, let's look at the forward markets and how it can be used for hedging. So Highbrow Glassware Company imports glassware from Waterford Crystals in Ireland. Highbrow purchases $50,000 worth of crystal glassware at the current spot rate of $1.39 per euro on net 90 terms. In order to hedge its foreign exchange rate, Highbrow decides to sell euros in 90-day forward markets, right? So what is Highbrow hedging? It's hedging, well, unfavorable movements in exchange rates, right? So 90 days later, has to pay 90 days later, and it wants to take advantage of that credit of 90 days, but it's uncertain what the exchange rate would be then, and they don't want to have to spend too much more than $50,000. Suppose the currency, the US dollar, depreciates, and now we need $1.50 per euro to get 1 euro. Then Highbrow will have to spend a lot more, right? But it sees that in the 90-day forward markets, there is a contract which will allow it to exchange euros for $1.40, right? And so it's going to use that contract. It's going to sell euros in that forward market, and so that it has guaranteed exchange of $1.40 at the rate of $1.40 per euro. Now, after 90 days, suppose the actual exchange rate turns out to be $1.37, right? How much did Highbrow save or lose in US dollars by hedging its exposure? Well, first of all, we said, oh, there's $50,000 worth of crystal glassware. Well, how many euros is it in today's terms? We use the spot rate, and we find out that's about 35,971.22 euros. Well, that's how much Highbrow has to pay in euros after 90 days, if it takes the net 90 terms, right? So it can lock in that with the forward market, you can lock in the rate of $1.40, right? So with the forward hedge, Highbrow can buy 35,971.22 euros for for $1.40 per euro, and that turns out to $50,359.71, right? Okay, so that's basically a locked-in price, and once you've entered this contract, there's no getting out of it because it's a forward contract. Well, but if Highbrow had not made that forward hedge, now that the actual exchange rate has fallen from $1.40 per euro to $1.37 per euro, well, it would only cost 49,280.57, right? It's the 35,971.22 euros that they have to pay. At today's rate, 90 days later would be 137, would only mean that they would need to pay $49,280.57. Well, so what we see is that in this particular case, hedging made Highbrow lose some money. It's like the 50,359.71 they have to pay, versus without the hedging they could have just paid 49,280.57. So the loss is $1,079.14, right? So as we can see, we don't always save money from hedging. However, hedging removes the uncertainty, right? Things could have just as easily gone the other way around. So hedging can remove the uncertainty, and it provides a more stable business environment. The chance that we may not come out ahead, like right now, that you can consider that to be the price of hedging, right? Okay, well, we're going to look at some definitions here. Bubba learns that Eurodollar deposit in Credit Suisse pays an interest rate of LIBOR plus 50 basis points. Speak American, he says. I know they use euros in Europe, not dollars. Also, what is this LIBOR business? And how much is a basis point? Educate him, right? You can tell Bubba that Eurodollar deposit is a US dollar denominated deposit in a foreign bank, and it doesn't have to be a bank in Europe, right? Any foreign bank. Interest rates in the Eurodollar markets are quoted based on London interbank offered rate, right? So there's a group of big banks that get together and figure out, based on demand and supply of various currencies, they figure out the interest rates on various currencies, right? And those are called LIBOR rates, London interbank offer rate. So there is a LIBOR rate for the US dollar, there's a LIBOR rate for the euro, there's a LIBOR rate for Japanese yen, and so on, right? LIBOR is a variable rate determined by a group of multinational banks. The parlance basis points, what's a 50 basis points? Well, 50 basis points is 0.5%. Just like a percent is 1/100th of 1, right, the number. Well, 100%, 100 basis points make 1%, right? 100% makes 1. So 50 basis points is 0.5%. Bubba tells you that his friend Cooter has purchased some Yankee bonds issued by Mitsubishi Corporation. I'm a proud Southerner, he says. I can't imagine Cooter buying Yankee bonds even if the yield is higher. Explain to Bubba why purchasing a Yankee bond will not damage his Southern credentials. Also tell him about Eurobonds. Right? And you can explain to Bubba that a Yankee bond is simply a US dollar denominated bond sold to Americans but issued by a foreign company. Bonds issued by a foreign issuer but in domestic currency and sold in domestic markets are generally referred to as foreign bonds. Right? In contrast, a bond issued and sold in one country denominated in another country's currency is called a Eurobond. Right? This term applies to all such bonds, regardless of the country or the currency of issue. In other words, the term is not euro specific. Right? So, anyways, right? Let's say there's people in China who want to invest in U.S. dollar denominated bonds, right? So a U.S. company can actually issue bonds in China and sell them in China, but they're denominated in U.S. dollars. Those are what will be known as euro bonds, right? Of course, the bonds are going to be issued by the Chinese subsidiary of the U.S. company. It has to be a Chinese entity, but they're denominated in U.S. dollars. We'll call that a euro bond. Okay, Loveless Incorporated is considering investing in a manufacturing operation in a foreign country. What are some of the capital budgeting constraints it must consider beyond normal considerations that it would encounter in domestic markets? Well, Loveless Inc. will have to consider inflation-adjusted cash flows using the foreign country's expected inflation. It must consider the cash flows that can be repatriated to the U.S. Foreign governments may restrict cash flows that can be repatriated. So repatriated meaning brought back, right? Sometimes the foreign country's government may say, well, you must at least reinvest 50% of your profits in the country. And so only the other 50% can be brought back. Right? Also, these cash flows are subject to additional risks, such as the exchange rate risk, right? The company must consider exchange rate risk. This is the risk that exchange rates may move unfavorably and the repatriated cash flows may be lower than expected. Forward or futures contracts can be used to mitigate this risk, but that's not possible in all cases. Lovelace must also consider political risk. This is the risk that foreign countries may undergo regime change or otherwise become unfriendly to foreign firms. Then the government could take action that may reduce the value of Loveless investments. Right? Under extreme circumstances, foreign firms can simply be nationalized, which means the government just takes over the company's assets and leaves it with nothing. We have considered the most notable complications that international investments bring to a company's capital budgeting decisions. Right? Company's capital budgeting decisions. It is important to note that the above list is not all there is to it. It's not an exhaustive list. Okay, amongst his friends, Boomer is the bright one, graduating from college in a record time of 9 years. He had learned that companies target a value-maximizing capital structure, right, or the mix of debt and equity. He is also aware that target capital structures vary widely from one industry to the next. The company he works for, Bites Ivy and Byrne, sends him on an assignment to foreign land where he observes that companies across all industries have higher debt ratios than in the U.S. From this observation, he concludes that the value-maximizing capital structure also varies by country, but he cannot find the reason for it. Can you help Boomer solve this puzzle? Well, Boomer's observations are correct, although his conclusion may not be right. Capital structures look different across countries, mainly due to differences in accounting practices. The four most notable differences in accounting conventions are in regards to 1. Valuing assets on historical versus replacement cost basis. Right? So how are assets valued? Historical means the book values, right? Replacement costs are more like market values. Treatment of leased assets are some of those leased assets off the book, or are they capitalized? Pension plan funding. different ways pension plans are funded. Capitalizing versus expensing R&D, research and development, right? How is that accounted for? So Rajan and Zinkels, in a study conducted in 1995, was a pretty big seminal study, thorough examination, and they found that much of the differences in capital structures across various countries can be explained away by these different accounting practices. However, some differences in cross-country capital structures still remain unexplained. Well, this is going to bring us to the end of this lecture, and this is the last one, so I'm not going to be back with another one.